Welcome to more JS coding. We're going to start by looking at an application that I did which I recently upgraded. This is a Norse Hangman game. We're looking at it here in Chrome, and basically it gives you a Norse word and then you guess and play Hangman with it. And it also lets you have a hint where it shows you the meaning of the Norse word. So if I click here on the hint, JavaScript alert, meaning it's high seat, place of honor. And I'll just start to kind of randomly play this here, and you can see I don't actually remember what that Norse word is, so that's kind of funny. I'm probably going to lose here. We'll see real quickly here. And I guess I'm going to give up. So, oh no, I certainly didn't know that. So on to Wegi. All right. So anyhow, it works pretty well. We have an about here, it pops up. So basically it uses JavaScript alerts to communicate with the user. And then I have a series of buttons. So what I wanted to do is look at the code here. So let me go into Dreamweaver and we'll take a look at that. So let's start with the HTML, which we're looking at here. And you can see that we have two JavaScript files. That's the one that contains the Norse information, and that's the one that has the code for the Hangman game. This, by the way, is the Norse word for hangman, hropmother. And that's a special character there that has to be spelled with a character entity. The Hangman gifts, there's a series of those, hang 0 through hang 7. So this starts out with the first one here. That's at the top of the display. Notice, by the way, how I've just used divs to set up the display. This actually works really swell on many form factors. So if we cruise over here and take a look at the multi-screen preview, you can see it's not too bad for the small form factors. So, which usually I don't get that lucky with that. Okay, so here are the two buttons. We have the give up and the hint, and then we have a whole bunch of buttons to do the Norse keys, so you can type in the Old Norse letters. And we'll look at the code here in a second. I just wanted to get that square with you. And then there's an about button down here, mail link, which you've seen before, and then that's the boilerplate code for the HTML5 badge. Okay. If we go on over here to Norse.js, there's the data set. And that's kind of interesting. I just noticed this is old, so it's actually using two parallel arrays, so I'll have to change that. Right now, though, I have that set up to do two parallel arrays, which isn't really very good. I thought I had redone this. Anyhow, what happens is the first array is the Norse words, and the second is the meaning, and then the index is parallel. So the index 0 here for the first word in Norse corresponds to index 0 down here in the meaning array, and that's the meaning of the word. Okay, that's not the best way to do things. It's much better to use objects, and I have done that. I'm kind of surprised I still have the old data set here hooked into this, so I'll have to upgrade this. Okay, let's look at the JavaScript code. So again, this just creates two arrays. And basically what I did is I got this all working, and then I wrapped the entire thing here as an anonymous function. So this window on load will basically wait for the page to render, and then it'll do the script. And so the entire thing is a function. We start with our global variables. It's always best if you can minimize these if you can. And at the very least, if you use a lot, you should go ahead and encapsulate the whole thing like I have here in a function. A lot of times in JavaScript we use multiple class libraries that we get from other places. And if you don't encapsulate your code, you tend to have conflicts where you have variable names that have a conflict with a similarly named variable in the library you're using. So again, these are globals, and they're mostly control values for this. So you can see a number of things here. There's some details I won't go into about manipulating the Hangman game. So for instance, you have to break the word that you're guessing down into the individual letters. When the user submits a letter, you scan through and see if that's a letter in the word or not, and add it to the list of guessed words. And if it's a miss, then it counts against them, and you update the image. And eventually, if they miss 7 times, they lose. So here we have the init function, and often if I don't have this all encapsulated, what I'll have up here instead is window on load init. So init is a setup function, and you can see that we use the get element by ID to grab the man area. That's where the display with the images is of the hanged man. And then we have the display reference, which is going to be a reference to the display area where we show the Norse word. And then we have another area called hint reference, where we can display the hint if the user pushes the hint button. So again, we go ahead and just grab these and hook them up. And of course, those 3 are global, so they're already defined up here. And then we have a method that builds the keyboard. We'll look at that in a second. And then pick word really starts the game. So let's go on down here, and we'll look at the keyboard code here. So again, there's a lot of code here, but it's really quite simple. So as you can see, the first thing we do is we get the 3 things for the button. So the give up button, the about button, and the hint button. And we assign the functions that work to those. So if we go back up here at the top, let's look at that real quickly. About is the simplest one. So all the about does is it brings up a window alert function that shows the attributes of the game, my authorship, and all that. And so you can see that this is a function definition. So when the page loads, that doesn't run. It just compiles that and it's ready to go. And then when you hook it up like this, notice how I don't use the parentheses here. So I'm not really calling the function there. I'm simply saying that when the user clicks the about button here, run the about function. So that doesn't actually run any code, and then when the user clicks on the button, that creates what's called an event, and the event now has what's called an event handler, and then that triggers the about function. So again, real quickly here, if we pop over into live view, when I click about, there's the window alert, and that's how that works. Okay, let me get out of live view there again. Let's see. Oops, I'm back into the HTML. Sorry about that. Here we go. Okay, so the rest of this is pretty straightforward. I have an array of keys that are set up there. We saw that in the HTML markup. And these are the keys that I need for the Old Norse characters. I have a single function that handles all of them, and it takes the parameter of what letter to use. So that's called guess letter. And then here you can see the individual keys. The reason I have to do this is it's difficult to enter the old Northern European letters with the regular keyboard. And so I just made an on-screen keyboard for the user to use. So again, this works the same way. One thing that's kind of weird about the syntax here is you'd think that you could simply say onClick equals this. That doesn't seem to work. Whenever you want to pass a parameter, what I end up doing is creating it with the full syntax like this. So I'll say onClick equals function, and then within that function I'll call the actual function and pass the parameter. Again, the parameter is this part here that's being passed in. So that's going to hook the guess letter function up to each one of the keys, but it also hooks it up to send the particular key to the guess letter function. Let's see, real quickly, here's the give up function. Again, it just pops an alert up, and then we'll look at this, the pick word function. It actually generates the next word for the next game. Let's see, this I haven't implemented yet. This is actually just set up to just say that the user pushed it. The idea here is the user can guess the entire word at once. I'm not sure I'm even going to bother to implement that actually. Okay, so here is our guess letter. Notice it takes the parameter, which is the letter that the user pushed. So this is the function that's tied to the individual keys. And then basically we have a Boolean variable that just indicates whether or not that letter is in the word you're trying to guess. And I used to have this set with a different setup where you had to push a button to start the game. Now, because I have the alerts in there, I just have the game run constantly. So when you load the page, the game is running, you play. When it ends and you click through the alert, then it just plays again. So it seems like it works better. So really this isn't used anymore. The bool new game will never be false. Okay. So if you look through here, this int word length is the length of the word, which is broken down into an array called string letters, and this for loop will roll through that array and see if the new letter, which is string guess, which got passed in here, is equal to one of the letters in the word you're trying to guess. So if this line here is true, that means that that word letter that you just guessed is in fact in the word, and now we have to mark it as being found because we have to keep track of that to tell when the entire word is guessed. And then we also set this Boolean here to be true, that we got one. And then basically we'll go ahead and add the number of guesses here. Oh, I'm sorry. This string guesses so far is actually the string that contains all of the letters that you already used. So what this does is it adds the new letter that we just guessed to the string with a space. It'll be spaced out. And now notice here, this case is where we missed it. So we guessed a letter, but it wasn't in the word. So we increment the misses counter. And then right here is the code that increments the image. So notice that the images all are cleverly named hang underscore and a number. And so it starts out at 0. We just incremented this number right here. So now that makes it go to the next image. And notice this, if int misses is greater than 6, that means that this is the last image where the guy's completely hung, and now the game is false. Then we call a method called printWord that actually updates the whole display, and we'll use that in several places. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the printWord, which is right here. And you can see that we're building some HTML markup in here, which we're eventually going to assign with the inner HTML method. So this will create the status span, and then this is going to roll through, and basically what it does is if the word is known, if the letter's been found, it shows it. Otherwise, it adds one of these underscores. So that'll show basically a underscore for each letter that you haven't guessed yet in the word. Okay? And then what's going on here? Let's see. Yeah, so so basically it says if the word is unknown, if the letter is unknown, add this. Otherwise, it is known, add the letter in. So that's going to build that thing, which will either be dash dash letter, etc., for each letter that's actually been found. Then we do a quick test here to see if we got the entire word. If we have, then we print out some code that says you won. And notice how I've got the variables interpolated here. So this is the word you were trying to guess in Norse, and this is the meaning of the word. Again, those were derived from that array we saw at the beginning of the presentation here. Okay, then let's see. And if you have more than 6 misses, that means this is the 7th one. That means the man is hung and you lost the game, and then we generate some stuff like that. It's the same. This case is just where you've lost the game, though. And now here's where we take that. So you see what's going on here? We're building this string status variable, which has the information about the current state of the game. And regardless of what that information is, when we get down here, we now display it by writing to the inner HTML of the page. And then if it's not if not Boolean new game, that means it's not a new game. That's kind of weird, but that means basically that we are still playing. Then we won't do this. Otherwise, we'll call the pick word. And what pick word does is it gets the new word from the array. Here's the pick word method. So notice we have a random here. Int number of words is actually the length of the word array. Remember, that's 2 parallel arrays. And yeah, that's kind of weird because there it looks like I'm using the object-oriented code. So I might have opened the wrong file there, actually, because I thought I had updated this. So this is using the file that I showed you in class the other day, where I have an array of objects. And so I'll have to look at that and see. It looks like I opened the wrong file here to start with, and I am in fact using the object, which is preferred. So you can see basically it generates a random index on the array of all words, and then it picks that word, and the W part of that is the Norse word, and the M part is the meaning in English. And right there you can see those are in the same array. So this is using the object-oriented representation, not the parallel array that I opened. And then int word length is the length of the word. That's how many letters we have to guess. We initialize the misses to 0. Our guesses so far, which is just a long string of the letters we've used, which gets displayed, we set that to a space. And then now we roll through, and we have an array here called string letters and string status. Those are parallel arrays. That's okay here to use these. It kind of makes sense to do that. And then what this does is character at I gets the individual letter at that position. So what this does is it reads through the word and creates an array where each element of the array are the individual letters of the word. And then this parallel array here is set initially to be unknown because the user hasn't guessed those. It might be better to say unguessed instead of unknown, but that's it. And then again we set the image to the very first one in the sequence, and we call that print word function we just went forward to update the display. Okay, I think that's pretty good here, and I'm just under 20 minutes, so I'm going to call this one done.